show them this picture that I'm showing you. It's actually a very famous patent of an invention that transformed, changed the world. And maybe in the comments you
Hey, Shannon, can you hear me?
I can. How about you?
We can hear you.
Okay, great.
Okay, so we're going to be ready to go for you to start at 12:55.
Okay. Let me double check and look. Let me look again. Is the YouTube link live as well?
Yes, so the YouTube is linked straight from the agenda.
Okay. Okay, good. Yes, I got it now. Before the time it looked like it was 2 something, that it was.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So we're good now.
Yes, you are good. At 12:55, that's when we'll send people over and you can get started.
Okay, so I want to just look really quick. I have most of my links open in Firefox. Can I actually switch over and oh yeah, it looks like I can.
You should make sure. Yeah, when you share your screen, you should be able to share any window that you have open.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. All right, we'll talk to you soon then.
Okay, can I stay inside of here for now?
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. right. If you're ready to go, you can go ahead and start.
Yes, I'm ready. And everybody can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So my name is Shannon Estep. I am doing this session, which is going to be on a program called Scratch. And if you know anything about coding, you've maybe heard this Scratch term before. So I'm going to spend just a little bit of time talking about Scratch and why I think it's important and beneficial for students. And then we'll jump into Scratch and actually play around a little bit. So my hope is that you guys are able to not only see and hear this presentation, but maybe open up another tab and be able to play around with Scratch as I do. I'll walk you right through it and do a couple of basic things so that you guys can get your hands on it. And it may be, if you've never done coding before, you're going to see how easy it is for kids and adults to learn how to do this. So you can see here on this first slide, just the title, and I actually work at Northern Kentucky University. I work in the teacher education department, and I actually started jumping into coding for kids, really for my own kids. And it was something that they were interested in and something that our current elementary school did not really offer very much of. So we decided to jump in and learn it. Okay. So the background on coding, I have a couple of quotes here that I thought gave you a good idea as to why I think this is so important. I know sometimes coding feels like a topic that is really just about those kids that are really big into technology, and it's really more about logic skills and sequencing and problem solving and computational thinking. You can see a couple of quotes here. Learning to code makes kids feel empowered, creative, and confident. I can tell you, as I've watched kids learn this, they're kind of amazed that they're able to make things move and recolor and create a whole program on their own. Another quote from one of my favorite people, Sal Khan, talks about how these skills are really going to impact the future, and what these kids learn through programming skills is going to have a big impact on that. So I really do think that these skills aren't just about the idea of coding. It's about using their minds to problem solve and think creatively. All right, so a few basics that you need to know about Scratch. I'm going to mention this here, that Scratch is intended to be for typically maybe third grade and up. There is a program called Scratch Junior that's really intended to be more for younger kids. I personally have done Scratch Junior with first, second, and early third graders. And I did Scratch with fourth, fifth, and sixth graders. Of course, not every kid's going to fit into that box, but in general, that's kind of distinguishes the two. But today we're talking about Scratch. Scratch runs on any desktop, laptop, or Chromebook, and it runs through any browser window. Scratch Junior runs a little bit differently. This is designed as a beginning coding tool for kids. And the reason it's for beginning coding is that they use graphical coding blocks. You can actually see over on the right kind of that picture of what those coding blocks look like. They're almost like puzzle pieces that allows them to move and talk and interact with other characters. It's so easy to snap those pieces together that they don't even realize that they're coding. And that's why it's a really great beginning tool for kids. All right, so this is the general interface of Scratch, and we're going to actually jump in and take a look at this. So I'm going to switch over into another screen here. And this is Scratch, the URL, which is in my presentation, which is linked if you guys go back and take a look at that. But it's scratch.mit.edu, which gives you an idea that it was actually created by some folks at MIT, and this is completely free for anybody to use. Now, when you come to this screen, you guys will see in the upper right-hand corner a sign up or a login button. You don't have to sign up for an account in order to use Scratch, but the benefits to that is that you get to save everything that you create in this little folder right here called My Stuff. So while you can hit create and just jump on in, and you guys can certainly do that now as you're playing around and participating with what I'm doing. But if you do create an account, everything you've created, I'll go ahead and click on this, is saved inside this folder automatically. The other thing you might notice is underneath my account, you can see it says teacher account. This is free for teachers to create, again, what's called a teacher account. And the difference between a regular account and a teacher account is that you are able to create classes. And you can see over here, I have my classes. The great advantage to that is you can create usernames and passwords for your students to use in the classroom, and you can create what's called a studio. And the studio is kind of a separate place where students can share their items with each other. They can comment on each other's pieces. They can kind of a separate place from being out online everywhere that people can see it. So in order to sign up for a teacher account, and I'll talk about these resources a little bit later, but there's an educator resource area that will allow you to sign up for a teacher account. Free to do. It takes about a day for them to approve your teacher account, and then you're good to go. Students don't have to have accounts created through that you create. They can create their own here, but there is an added level of security there where you're creating them. So if you guys are on Scratch, I'm going to go ahead and over here and hit create, and this will take us to the area that Scratch, that we can see all the pieces of Scratch. Now, if you guys did click on that, what you might have first seen in this middle area is a tutorial box. Usually the first time you log on, that's what you see, or even click create. That will walk you through a series of tutorials about kind of getting started. You can always get back to a tutorial area up here at the top left corner where it says tutorials. But you can delete that out or hit the X to get rid of that for now. And we'll play around a little bit, but know that you can always come back to tutorials. Okay, so first thing I want to show you is sort of the layout of this. If you were at all familiar with Scratch, in January of this year, they actually went from Scratch version 2.0 to 3.0. So if you'd been in there at all, this is going to look a little bit different, but everything for the most part is still there. It's just sort of in different places, like all new versions of things do. So what you guys are seeing here is this over here is kind of your stage. And this is, if you think about this almost like you're putting on a play or you're setting up a scene, you're going to have actors, I'm using air quotes here, actors, which are these little characters. And these are called sprites inside of Scratch. These sprites, you can have multiple sprites. They'll all be listed right down here at the bottom. To add a sprite, there's a little blue button right in that Scratch or in that sprite area where you can hit a little choose a sprite. Looks like a little magnifying glass. And then it'll bring up an option where you can choose from all of these different options. Some look more animated than others, kind of depends on what you're looking for. There's some categories here at the top. We'll play around with these a little bit later, but I want you to see all of these characters are possible. With any given sprite, it's going to have a name, which is here. It's going to have an X and Y coordinates. Obviously, as I move these around, those X and Y coordinates will change. And a few other options for our sprites, the size of it, which we'll play around with later, the direction in which it's faced, and show or hide it. Over here on the right is an area where you can add in backdrops. Backdrops is your background or your stage, I'm going to say. You can add in any kind of backdrop you want down here at the bottom by clicking on the little blue button. Same kind of hour, or looks like an identifier. If you click on that, you'll see all sorts of different backgrounds that you can add in to your stage. So again, some of them are going to look more anime or cartoony. Some are going to look more like photo pictures. You can choose anything you want to add to the background. I'm going to add one in here just so you can see what it does. All right, now we have our cat. I should have mentioned that the cat is the standard logo for Scratch. So by default, you always get the cat sprite. You can certainly delete that out. There's a little X right here, And as I showed you, you can add in anything you want. But for now, we'll just go ahead and leave our cat. All right, so those are great, and that makes things look a little more fun, but we haven't actually looked at any kind of coding yet. That's where this section over here comes in. Each of these colored circles represent several blocks of code that can be added together to make things happen. So I'll start here at the top, and if you guys, again, are inside of Scratch, take a look at this as well and kind of click through with me. So we have motion. This one's pretty self-explanatory. These are things that, for the most part, allow them to move. So if we wanted the cat to move, we might use this motion block. The next one down is looks. This one has to do with things that you would think have to do with looks, like maybe changing the size or changing color, showing or hiding characters, but also a few other things, like if you want them to say something or think something. Those are also under the category of look. If you're not sure where something is, just start clicking through here, you'll find it. So the looks allow kids to do a lot of really fun things, like make the characters look like they're talking, or make it look like they're changing costumes. I'll explain costumes in just a second. The third one down is sounds, exactly what it sounds like. It is where you can play sounds for different characters. So if we wanted the cat to make a meow sound, we would use this, this block here. If we wanted it to change the pitch or we wanted to change the volume, we would use these. The next one down are events. So these are really important. If you happen to look, a couple of the ones that we had look like they had little notches where something would connect to it. These events blocks are typically your starting blocks. See how they're rounded at the top? Those are usually what kick off your code. It's usually what starts any kind of code that we are looking to start. And I'll show you how those work in just a second. The last one I'm going to show you, because I would say these 5 are probably the ones that kids use the most often. The last one is a control. And these are where you get to, just like it sounds, control how things work. So you might want to repeat something. You might want something to wait. And if you're at all familiar with coding and you're familiar with if, then, else statements, that's how you do those here. But even if you're not, the wait and the repeat are very common things that you would use in any kind of code to allow you more control over when and how often things happen. So this costumes and this sounds I'm going to come back to in a second, but since I've shown you all 5 of these, I want to show you how to do something. So what I want you guys to do, and I'm going to do the same thing, is I want you guys to pick, if you haven't already done this, pick any background and any, let's do 3 different sprites, any 3 sprites that you want to add to your screen. And one of the things I had kids do is I had them actually go under the letters and either put in their initials, or if their whole name was short, maybe spell out their name, or it's just another option. This is an easy way to add in sprites quickly, and they got to pick out something that represented them with letters. So you guys go ahead and add in, and I'm going to do the same thing, 3 total sprites, and go ahead and add in a background just for fun if you haven't done that yet, and I'll do the same. So I'm going to add in an S. This one's kind of fun too. I should show you this. Under the sprite, if you roll your mouse over where it says surprise and you click it, it'll just add in any sprite just for fun. I got a taco this time. So you can add in anything if you want to be surprised. And if you want to have more control, you can choose it on your own. And I'm trying to keep my eye on the chat. So if you guys have questions, throw them out there. All right, I'm going to use these 3. So let me know, are you guys able to add your sprites in and add a background in? I see one comment that says that they bought a coding book for their grandson. Yes, I will talk about a couple of resources that will allow kids to get started on these, even on their own. You'd be surprised. I handed a book to my son, and he picked it up and was off and running before I knew it. So they really did pick up on this quickly. Okay, good. Carissa, thank you. She, I think, added in her sprites. Okay, so I have got several sprites here. So in order to code any sprite, first you have to make sure you're on your sprite. So make sure down here you click on it. Now, I told you that most coding starts with an event. So I'm going to click on the event, and there are several ways to start a piece of code. For this one, I'm going to choose the block that says when the sprite is clicked. In order to make this a part of this sprite's code, I drag and drop it into this big area right here. So I chose the one that said when this sprite is clicked. So when I click on S, I want something to happen. Now, I haven't added any code to it yet, so it's not going to make any sense yet, but I'm going to now. So for this one, I'm going to click on the look category. I'm going to bring that, click on that, and I'm going to see all of my options. What I want to do for this one, so it's very obvious, I'm going to click on where it says change color effect by 25. And I'm going to snap those two blocks together. Okay, they're snapped together, but nothing has happened yet because I haven't actually clicked the sprite. So students will ask this. They'll say, but I connected the code. Why isn't it running? Because you have to do what you said you were going to do to make it run. So if I click on my S here, you can see it just changed color by 25. You could change this. The way Scratch works is the color coding is from 0 to 200, all of those with an array of colors. So you could change this effect to make it more dramatic, but if I keep clicking it, it'll keep changing colors for me. Okay, very, very simple code. All we said was when we click on this sprite, change the color. So let's take a second sprite. I'm going to take my R here. I'm going to go back to my events. I'm going to add in the same event, but of course it's on a different character now. When this sprite is clicked, this time I'm going to go to the motion category. And I'm going to make this sprite turn. So I'm going to grab this one, connect it, and let's say I want this to change 90 degrees. I'm just typing in a new number there. So in order to make this happen, I need to click on my sprite, and now it's turning. All right, so we just successfully coded 2 sprites. We're going to code our third one. This time I'll use my cat. Back to our events again. Once again, you always have to start with an event. So we're going to do this again. When the sprite is clicked, this time we'll go under the sounds category because it's fun. And the top one says play sound until done. Now you might be wondering, how does that sound get into the program? Underneath the sounds category up here at the top, this tab, I told you I'd come back to it. It has, in this particular sprite, it has a built-in sound. And obviously, for this one, I chose the cat, and it gave me the built-in sound of meow. But if it didn't come with a sound, or you're not crazy about that sound, you can add in any sound you want with this same button down here that looks like we were adding in a sprite or a background from over here. And you can add in any sound that you'd like. Okay, you can hear mine going off. If you roll your mouse over them, they'll play for you. I'm going to stick with my cat, but know that you can add in any sound that you want. And there's some editing features here where you can make it slower, echo it, make it sound like a robot. And let me tell you, students love this. Show them this, but show them when you're ready for them to play a little bit, because they are going to play with this. They're going to think it's a lot of fun to make things sound kooky and funny. Reverse is kind of silly. You can also record your own sounds right there. And let me tell you also, nothing is funnier to students than recording their own voices on the cat sprite or on anything else. So they have a lot of fun with the sounds, making different characters speak or making funny noises. That was a challenge to get them back focused on me again after I showed them these parts. All right, so I'm going to go back to my code, and I said I wanted to play the sound meow. If you had more than one sound in there, you could choose from all of them in this drop-down menu. So if I click on my cat, there's his cat sound. Again, it could have been click on it, and it would have been a voice recording. It could have been a drum sound. It could have been anything. but this is just the basic code block that will allow you to play a sound. So you guys just added in 3 pieces of code to 3 different sprites, hopefully. And that is, in its basic sense, how you snap blocks together and make code play or run. So I'm going to pause here a second and make sure, do you guys have questions? And did you get that to work right before I move on to another exercise for you guys? Let me make sure you guys are all good and with me. You guys will be surprised too when you show them just these basics, how to get started, how to add these blocks together, how quickly they are able to run with this and be able to create things that can move or can make sounds. All right, I think you guys are okay. I will keep my eye on this chat in case you throw a question out there, but I'm going to keep going. Okay, great. I think you guys are okay. Okay, so we can save any project that we are working on up here where it says untitled. I'm going to go ahead and save this as, I'm going to call this Sprite Basic Practice. You can name it anything you want. One thing I do tell my students, since they have the option of sharing this in a studio to each other, it's not a bad idea to put their initials or their names or something on here in case several of them are named the same. So sometimes I'll have them be a little more identifiable in the names up here at the top. But for this, you guys can choose anything that you want. All right, if it doesn't have an option over here that says save, it's probably automatically saved it for you. If you do see that save button, go ahead and click it and make sure it's saved. And if you did log in, you would see this underneath the folder option. You may not have taken the time to do that right now, but if I click on this, you're going to see it was saved right inside of my folder, so I can always come back to this later. All right, I'm going to show you guys a second exercise that will get a little more detailed. So let me go ahead and click the Create button again. And this one is going to take me to a blank screen. If you guys are still on this screen, you can always go up to File, New if you wanted to start a new project. So I'm going to make sure you guys are there. And what I'm going to have you guys do for this is I'm going to have you guys actually delete out your cat, because for this exercise, we're going to add in another character. And it'll allow me to show you a little bit of animation. And that's always what students want to know too. How do I make it move and how do I make it do things? So down here, I want you guys to add in a new sprite. And this one will allow you to, if you want to use the search, you can. But the one I want you guys to add in is Ballerina. And if you move your mouse over it, you can see that she kind of does a little dancing. She's a little awkward in her dancing, but she does dance. So I'm going to add her in. One of the books I use calls her Becky the Ballerina. So that's what I'm going to call her. So I'm going to add in Becky here, and we're going to also add in a new background. And I think this one's called Theater. It makes it look like she's on a stage. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make it look like she's on a stage. So I'm going to add this Theater 2. You guys don't have to pick this one. I just want to pick this one because I think it makes the most sense to her. But if you are following along and you guys are able to add these in, go ahead and add it in. All right, so to get Becky to dance here, we have to do a couple of different things. So the first thing we're going to do is go over to Events. And this time I'm going to show you when green flag is clicked. This is another event trigger, which allows your program to start. You guys see up here above the stage, there's a green flag. And this green flag will allow a program to start if you click it. This is often how the little ones in Scratch Junior will play their programs, is they'll use the green flag. So we're going to use that this time just to show you a variety. So underneath Look, I'm going to show you guys, there is an option here that says Next Costume. I want you to drag it over, but don't connect it just yet. I want to show you what they mean by costume. I told you I'd come back to this tab too. This costume tab allows you to see the different costumes that are associated with any given sprite. Now, obviously, this is going to change depending on the sprite that you used. And maybe the sprite you chose only has one. You can always add in costumes, and you can even create them on your own if you want. But if you flip through Becky here, Becky the ballerina, you can see that the different costumes are what make it look like she's dancing. So our goal is to basically have it change costumes in such a way that it looks like she's dancing. Now, again, it depends on the costumes that are associated with that sprite on how it's going to look and how it's going to move. Before I jump back to the code, I want to show you if one of your kiddos thinks, gosh, I really like Becky here, but I'm not crazy about her shoes. I want to change that. You can actually modify all sorts of these things by changing the color options. We can color her shoes a different color. We can color her tutu a different color. Lots of different ways to modify these and make them look different. And it allows for that creativity for kids. This is another area that once you show them that they can do this, they're going to spend a lot of time in here. Another thing I should show you is if you want to make a copy of a costume and make a modification to it, you can do it here. You can also flip characters horizontally or vertically if you choose to do that. Usually people look for this if they want a character to turn so it looks like they're talking to another character. All that's done under costumes. All right, so if we go back to code here and we connect these, we can see that if we click on the green flag, she just changed costumes once. If I keep clicking the green flag, it looks like she's dancing. Okay, but who wants to do that? Because it doesn't make sense to sit here and click the green flag button each time. So instead, what we can do is we can come down to control and we can add in a repeater. So I told you this is where you can decide how often something happens and for how long. So I'm going to actually slide this right underneath my green flag, and it makes it look like it's inside of a sandwich. Anything that you put inside of here will be repeated that many times. So I'm going to actually change this to 20 times. And so now what we just told it is, when I click the green flag, I want you to do this 20 times. So now let's see what happens. Okay, she danced, but really, really quickly. I think too quickly. So what we're going to do now is we're going to use another code block under control that says wait, because we do want it to change costumes. But before it does change costumes, we want to wait just a small amount of time so she's not dancing like a maniac. What that amount of time should be really depends on what you're doing. So I'm going to say 0.1 seconds, and this is where you'll have to play around a little bit. The kids like playing around with these things to see what the right amount is. So now I've got when green flag is clicked, I want to repeat two things 20 times. The first thing is to change to the next costume. The next is to wait 0.1 seconds. So now let's see what it looks like. That looks better. Notice that when she's dancing, her costume changed to purple. That's because when I changed my costume, I only changed one of her costumes to purple. Probably not a great idea. I needed to change all three to purple if I really wanted it to be consistent, but not for this. It's okay. So Becky is now dancing for us, which is great. I'm going to add in one more thing here to show you one other piece of code. I'm going to add in one more sprite. I'm going to add in Avery here. All right, now Avery is standing and watching Becky. I'm going to actually flip Avery around. So I'm going to go over to her costume and have her flip horizontally. Now it looks like she's watching Becky. So now on Avery's code, I just want to add two things. I want to start it off. And this time I'm going to say when the sprite is clicked, I am going to go under my look and have her say something. So the very first one says say, And instead of just saying hello, I'm going to click inside of there and I'm going to change that to where it says bravo. All right, so Avery's not going to do anything until I click on her. So I'm going to click on her after she's done dancing. So now let's run it. Becky's dancing for us. And then I'm going to click on Avery and she says, bravo. Could I have set it up so that when this is done, an automatic trigger tells her to say that? I could have. You can do just about anything with this. But for simplicity, I wanted to do it this way for us. So what we did here was under our ballerina, we added very simply a when green flag is clicked, repeat something 20 times, and we had it repeat twice. Rather, we had two things repeat 20 times. You might be wondering, what if I didn't want every single costume in here? Do I have to use them all? You don't. You can say switch costume to, and you can choose which costumes you want to show. So you have a lot of flexibility there. Again, for simplicity, I just said to use them all. You might wonder too, well, what do I do with this? I didn't really want it. If you slide it off to the left, it'll disappear. All right, I'm going to pause again. Make sure you guys are okay before I show you, after I showed you these general basics, where to go and find some more information to get started. Because now I know you guys are super jazzed about what Scratch can do for you. So you're going to want to know more. But before I show you that, I want to make sure that none of you are stuck and that I can't help with anything. So holler if you guys have any questions before I go back to my PowerPoint and show you a couple of other resources. Yeah, it really is amazing. I do feel like it is such a simple concept in connecting these together. You will be shocked by how students are able to run with this, truly. The way I taught this was I did an after school enrichment for it because, like I said, our school wasn't really teaching anything like this. I really was amazed at how far they got, and they really had a lot of fun with it, and their imaginations can really go wild with it. All right, I think you guys are okay. So I'm going to jump back over to PowerPoint for just a minute here and show you that I did include a few resources to show you some things you can do with this. So the first thing that I had is, of course, I'll take you to the homepage, the educators page. All of these things I have open in tabs. So I'm going to show you to them in just a minute. The coding cards are a great way to get started if you don't know anything about Scratch and you want to be able to kind of go through some exercises on your own. This is a great place to do that. Some starter projects, some additional curriculum, a beginner book that I liked, but there's plenty of them, a great Facebook support group for teaching with Scratch, and some differentiated challenge cards. So these are all linked here. I wanted to show you that you can get to them later, but let me go back and just show you a couple of these. From this main Scratch page, there was an option down here that said for educators, and that's where I am right now. This will tell you a little bit more specifically from the educator standpoint. Where are some resources? Here's some tutorials. These coding cards I mentioned, I'll show you these in just a second. Some ideas page to get started. Here is if you want to request that teacher account, I mentioned that, so you can create your classes in your studios. You can do that on this page too. They really give a lot of great resources, specifically with educators in mind, because it is such a powerful tool for students. These coding cards, so I showed you this document, and this is, let me go back here again. These coding cards right here. These are downloadable. It's a PDF. You can see it's 188 pages, which I know seems super daunting, but they are full pages that allow you, this was one that I kind of took you guys through where you could change the color of a letter, and it tells you step-by-step and directions how to do that. So some people I know will teach themselves how to use the program using these. That's what I did. But you can also print these out and give them to students as just students that like to work on their own, and they can work through these. So they will show you the steps to take, and then there's a try it. If you want it to spin, Here's how to do it. Here's a try it. And here's a tip actually for this one, to play a sound, and so on. This will walk you through, I think it's about 6 major exercises that will tell you all sorts of things that you can do inside of Scratch. So these are great, downloadable, free to use. Most of the resources I have found online for Scratch have all been free. Starter projects, just getting you started on some things that they might want to do. Lots and lots of free places to get started. People that have created things and just shared them out for other people to jump off with as starting ideas. This is a book that I used. There are a zillion of them, and the library will have plenty. The one thing I will tell you is, as you're looking for books, make sure that you're looking for a book that has something to do with, that they cover Scratch 3.0, because it is a little bit newer as of, like I said, January of this year. If you look at a book for Scratch 2.0, you'll muddle your way through it, but it's not going to look exactly the same. I probably picked up and looked at 3 or 4 books, and I thought this one was really easy to follow, and I liked how they laid it out, and I liked the exercises that they used. So this one was at the library too, but I ended up buying it just because I wanted to take notes and hold on to it, but it was one that I liked. This is a Facebook page that I have found to be super helpful, and it's called Teaching with Scratch. People will pose questions, all sorts of things. How do you do this in Scratch? Or I'm having trouble with this, or my students had this question and I'm not sure how to create this in code. And people are amazingly helpful, and they will give you sample code, or they'll jump in and help you. So I have found this to be great just for learning how other people are using it. I go here quite often to look and see what other people are doing. And the other thing I was going to show you is something that I got off of an idea actually from this Facebook group. I did these things called challenge cards. And what I did was each week I would pull up, so this was after week 1, I would differentiate these and say, wherever you're feeling like you are with this, try one of these as a reminder of what we did last week or yesterday or whenever you last did it. And if they got the beginner right away, I'd say, okay, go ahead into the intermediate and then go on to the advanced. So you guys are welcome to use these or change them. I got the template off of somebody and then made them specific to what I did. But it was a good way to review what we did and allow them a little bit of time to play around before I jumped into new components. And then at the end of the enrichment class I did a review game where I took quite a few of the ones I did before and I changed them just a little bit. I had a glass jar where I cut them up and put them into a glass jar, and then had these little competitions where they had to do these tasks. Sometimes they were on teams, sometimes they were alone, and they would win these little prizes I had, just again to review what we did during our time together. Lots of ways to use this, but I did like the idea of kind of making them come back to it and being able to review what we did in kind of a fun way. I also think anytime you can bring differentiation in and allow students to move on at their own pace, it's a good idea. So I think I'm near the end of my time here, very close anyway, and I want to make sure that I give you guys my contact information, which is at the end. Happy to answer any questions that you guys have, or reach out, please, if you need any additional information or anything that I can help with. All right, you guys, thank you so much for being in this session. I hope you walked away with something that might be helpful, or at least gives you a little bit of a foundation so that you could jump in and be able to teach yourself a little bit more about this. I really think if you guys follow those coding cards, you guys will be able to leap in and be able to jump in there. Yes, is there a way to have kids share? Yes, I'm sorry, I should have shown you that. As you create things inside of Scratch, let me go back here, and they're inside of your folder, there is, here's a project I worked on with them. You can choose to share. There's a button right here that allows them to share. And then they have an option whether they want to share it kind of as a whole or they want to share it to the studio. Oh, the other thing I should really show you really quick. When you go on Scratch, any of these projects that are out there, you can take a look at. And as you look at them, you want to play around with them maybe, if you hit remix, it'll actually create a copy of that project in your own folder, and you can play around with it so that you can modify or see what their code is behind it. So lots of great free resources out there so that you can go ahead and jump in and get started. All right, you guys, thank you so much. Please reach out to me if I can help moving forward.
Thanks, Shannon. Our kids at our school, they use Scratch and Computer Lab, and some of their creations are amazing. I'm always like, how in the world did you do that? But now I know, and now I can play around with it. We're going to take a quick break, guys, and we'll be back at 1:45.
Thank you.
everyone. Our next session will be starting in 5 minutes. All right, everyone, welcome back. We're going to go ahead and begin the second presentation now, where I will share with you Nearpod versus Pear Deck, or Nearpod and Pear Deck. everyone. Okay, looks like we've got it. All right, so my name is Natasha Grice. I am a teacher at Taylor Mill Elementary in the Kenton County School District, and I will be talking today about Nearpod and Pear Deck. So you may have heard of both of these student engagement platforms before and be wondering, which one would be best for me and which one would be best for my students, because I was wondering the same thing. So how it all began for me is we were looking for a reading program, and we stumbled upon ReadyGen. And ReadyGen had some really awesome, or has some really awesome components in it. But when looking over it with my team teacher, we found out that the biggest thing that was missing was student engagement. So it had great questioning, great text, but how were we going to get our students engaged and keep them engaged? And then we were also taking a lot of time looking at our district-wide cycle of quality instruction. So just a few things when looking at these to me that stood out was that all students interacted with the task. And I feel like, you know, we have the majority of our students interacting, but how do we get it so that 100% of our students are interacting with what we're wanting to do? And was there a way to get them all to interact, but then also collaborate? And then how can I, during the entire lesson, make sure that I'm giving that formative assessment and adjusting my instruction? So I had heard many times about Nearpod and Pear Deck, not as much. I think it's definitely coming out now to be more popular. So I actually started out using Nearpod, and in the past year and a half, I've kind of incorporated both into my lessons. Okay, so the first thing with Nearpod, it's a website that you'll go to. It's just nearpod.com, and there's a create button. So you're going to do create new presentation, and you can do a title slide. And then there are a variety of methods you can use to collect student data. So here are just a few examples. The first one up here, this is an open-ended question. So you can see too, my students' names were blocked on here, but there's actually a button on Nearpod where if you want to show student names, you can, or if you want to keep them blank, you also can. But when students respond, their question starts popping up here. One of my most favorite things is the participation. So we would get to like 80% and I'm walking around monitoring, and it got to the point where it's like, we're not moving on until we have that 100%. So, you know, students would encourage each other, like, hey, we got to get there. Who are we still waiting on? But just that was my way to ensure that all students were interacting. This too, I had it projected on my smartboard, so I could give students quick feedback, which we practiced a lot, restating our questions. So I would look up here and I would say, oh, this friend did not restate their question. I need you to go back and look at it. And I was also doing that as I walked around the monitor too. Another option is the collaborate feature. So you type in your question that you're gonna ask the students, but how they respond is almost like a blackboard where they can put up their post-it. Same thing, names are blocked on here, but you can always let them show as well. Also, one of the features that I like is teacher approval. So that means I have 9 responses waiting. So I would just click on that, and you always had a few friends that would just put in random stuff, but then they were like, shoot, I got busted. And then I would just deny their response and they would submit another one. And then on here too, I would always say, I'm looking for 2 really good answers. And then I would go around and I would give them a heart. So the students were like, ooh, what did that say? Now I know with both of these features, you're probably like, oh, well, that friend could just copy off of that friend's answers. But what I found is that that didn't happen as much, but it was also a way for those students that were just really unsure to kind of get ideas from friends. This over here, this is the quiz. So you can do a quiz option with your questions. There are polls that you can have them take. A lot of times I will do it at the end of the lesson or during the lesson where it'll say, how do you feel you're doing with identifying the main idea of the story? Okay, 4 means I'm a master and I can show somebody else. 3 means I'm pretty sure I have it. 2, whatever point where you got it, will really help them with it. So that was a cool thing. You need to see. Another option is all of it, which is really cool. So sometimes we would be practicing a vocabulary word and the same words would say all week. And I would say, okay, draw a picture of what this vocabulary word means. I've also seen this used in math a lot because students are able just to draw out their response, but then they can also add a text box explaining their thinking, which is pretty cool. There is a matching pairs option, so almost like the game concentration, really fun to do with vocabulary. One of the premium features is a fill in the blank feature. Those are some of my favorites. This is really, really cool. It's one of Nearpod's newest features. I'm just going to watch the sneak peek real quick. Okay, so that is Nearpod's time to climb feature, and it is a lot like Kahoot. So if you've ever played Kahoot before, it's a formative assessment tool where you go in, create questions, almost like a quiz, but students compete on a leaderboard. And this, on the Nearpod one, you get to go in and you get to create your little character. You get to pick one, and then it actually pops up your name. So it would be like Natasha over top. So then I guess since you have a whole class full, you would see all your friends, and then you would see them actually climbing the mountain together, and then they would receive points. And just like all the other features on Nearpod, you have the ability to hide their names or keep them visible. I think a lot of times my students like to keep them visible because it makes it a little more competitive. One of Nearpod's biggest features are also virtual field trips. So I actually paid for this virtual field trip because a lot of them are either premium or you do have to pay for them. But if you watch Nearpod's Twitter, sometimes they'll put out a like 5 for 25 gift card. And this was really cool because it fit into one of our Ready Gen stories. So we read the story, Escape from Pompeii. We were actually able to go on a virtual field trip. That is one I'm going to show you guys kind of what that looks like. This, I will tell you, my students hands down love the virtual field trips. It's really cool because clearly we can't go to Pompeii, we're in Kentucky, but they also get to experience what we're reading. And if you guys have questions, I will answer them at the end if you just stick them in the chat box. This is actually the video part. You can see you do a live lesson or have it student based as well once you create your lesson. And once you create your lesson and are ready to share it with your students, Nearpod will give you a code that will pop up, and it stays during the whole presentation, which is nice. But that's something that's the way for your students to connect. Sorry, guys. Lovely. So the code will stay up there while you are doing your presentation. So for some reason, students get kicked out of the presentation, they can always log back in there. Right, so let's see. Oh my goodness. Okay, keep me out. But when you go into this, so this is a video which is part of the activity. Since I bought a pre-made lesson, there's a way to there's a way where you can go in and actually explore the city of Pompeii. So students would just move around on their Chromebook. They can move it up, down, go down the streets of Pompeii. Another example of a virtual field trip that we did was we read a story called Three Native Nations. And one of the virtual field trips that NERPOD had was that you were actually able to go inside of a teepee. And the students love it. And of course, I'm going to spend the most time there. But it's really, really neat to see them actually experience and making that connection between what we're reading. So a lot of things that you can do social studies wise with those virtual field trips. So my 3 favorite things, only a couple, about Nearpod, you're definitely receiving a response from all students. Students are still able to collaborate, and it's a quick formative assessment because especially if you have it up there on the smartboard or just even walking around, you're able to give students that feedback right away too, which is a really nice feature. All right, Pear Deck. Like how cute are those pears? But Pear Deck is not a website. Pear Deck is actually an add-on for Google Slides. So how do you access Pear Deck? Unlike Nearpod, you go to nearpod.com. Pear Deck, you download it as an add-on. And then to use it with your Google Slide presentation, so instead of creating your presentation on like how Nearpod does, where you go into the website, create the presentation, you actually create your presentation through Google Slides. And then to add on features, you go to add-ons, Pear Deck, open your add-on. It's going to show up the way that you can add those questions in your presentation. So we have lesson, and we will look at this a little deeper in a couple of minutes. So Pear Deck's an add-on that we need. Pear Deck, when students are wanting to connect, you press the present button and they have code just like Nearpod does. So like I was just showing you, you have your beginning of lessons, your bell ringers and do nows, during lesson, end of lesson. Bell ringer, sometimes I'll do like, what do you know about this topic already? And you can choose kind of the same slide. So you can do a draw it, you can do a text, multiple choice. They also have a draggable feature. So like during the lesson, it might say, I don't know, you could do a true or false question. So they could drag their little dot on their screen to whichever bubble they think it is. End of the lesson, very similar to like they have smiley faces. So how do you think you understand the lesson? And they can choose a smiley face from there. A lot of different options with this. I'll show you guys real quick since I already have it up. So their text slides. In this tool, you can change your background on it. So we did an earthquakes unit, and I would have the background as earthquakes and then just do a backdrop behind the text. Drawing slides, another text slide, and there's the draggable slides I was talking about. And each student will have the little circle on their screen and be able to drag it to and from. During lessons. So you saw their basic text slide, but then you also have like timelines, which were really cool when you put order of events together, multiple choice, or how are you feeling, do you understand it? This is really neat, especially in science, if you're wanting them to label the diagram. Maps, connections, graphing, end of lesson. The same text slides, drawing slides, drawing slides. So there's a lot of different ways that you can ask students to show what they know, and without just having them use the text slide every time. All right, so here's just some examples of what we've done for collecting students' responses, matching the vocabulary words to the pictures. This is something that I personally haven't used that much, but I already have plans to do this year. It's one of Pear Deck's I would say definitely the best features, but it's called Flashcard Factory. So, I mean, you can do flashcards really for any subject, which is nice because it's helpful for everyone. Just a little tutorial of what the Flashcard Factory is actually all about.
Hi.
Okay, so like I was saying, how they log into Pear Deck. They're given a code, and they have to go to peardeck.com/join.
What's my favorite part?
Okay, so once they're in, this is the flashcard.
We're working with your group to make amazing flashcards. You're actually helping to make the flashcards the students are. We will vote on the cards. Team with the most chosen cards wins the game. So go back to the teacher section. Once I have somebody in there, I can click clock in, and notice I sign in there under my name, and it splits it into 2 groups: day shift group and night shift group. I can shuffle the groups. I can play. Let me go one more time as maybe.
Okay, sorry, there's too much static on my mic. Okay, let's see if that's better.
I want my accounts. Sign in under my personal one. What was that code again? LILFP. All right, so let me pop over to the teacher one. Notice now I have one person on night group, one person on day group. I can shuffle my teams if I want to, but let me go ahead and play. Again, from the teacher perspective, here are my 3 words up here. My 3 terms says, welcome to the factory. We're waiting for the flashcards to be made. This is the teacher perspective. We pop over to the student perspective. We're on our own. We only have 1 person on the team. Otherwise, you would see the people that are on your team. So let's go find them. All right, and notice first thing it actually asks you to do is we're not just reciting the definition. They give you the definition there. They want you to draw an example of a standard. So kind of up on that higher order thinking skills. So draw an example here with my mouse. And notice I can also type on there. Any of these tools, draw a line. The standard. This is something given to us by the state. So I could type on here. Standard, I don't know, 6.4. Patterns, functions, algebra, maybe for like a 6th grade one. Student should be able to, I forget how they word these, but I don't know, multiply fractions. And they change colors if I wanted to. But I go ahead and click up there on the board and I can move this around here. But there would be my standard. It is many times as I want. Okay. When I'm done drawing or typing my standard, I can hit I'm done drawing. And then I can write an example of a standard. Again, standard probably wasn't a good one for drawing, but again, I could use my example of a standard. Students should be able to divide fractions. And then you click I'm done writing. And if we pop back over here, oops, wait, let me finish this. I'm done writing. You can edit the text, you can edit your drawing. Again, this is a group, so this could be something done in a breakout room. You could say, yep, looks good, ship it. And if I pop back over here as a teacher, notice right there is my standard that we just did. Let me do another one here quick. Player knowledge. Let me draw a fun one of a student here. And then we're going to write an example. A student remembers how to count blocks before adding numbers. Happy, I can say it looks good, but and pop over here to the teacher one. And I've got my next card here. You can almost see it there. So, yeah, I wonder if somebody said finish the pictures in here. Wonderful drawing skills, I know. Taking a test. Writing answers on tests. Writing. I still like my light. There we go. Wonderful. Plus 4 is in there. So it looks good. And notice up at the top, it's giving me points for each one that I put in. Yay, made a flash card each turn. Waiting for our teacher to one. Hop over to teachers section. All right, students have good examples for all of our terms. Let's move on to quality control to check them. So as a teacher, you can. No, I don't think that's a good example of a standard, so I'm not going to give you points on that one. Yeah, that's a really good example of prior knowledge. And yeah, I think that's a good example of assessment. So